magical folk, welcome back to my channel. I hope we're all keeping safe and well. So I thought I'd give something a try. I am going to delve into the past of certain characters. Now I decided first of all to start with Professor Dolores Umbridge because she is arguably the most hated character in all of the Harry Potter fandom. So I figured I would take a delve into her life, where she came from, and why she came to be the evil witch that she is. So yeah, if you are interested in hearing Dolores Umbridge's story, then do carry on watching. Also, don't forget, if you are new and you haven't done already, then please hit the subscribe button to become part of my little magical community. Don't forget to turn the notification bells on as well to be notified every time I upload a video, and you can always check me out on my social media. Also, if you would like to support my channel in a little extra way, then why not join me on Patreon? I have an amazing patron, Alas Earwax. She helps me out so much with behind the scenes stuff and talking about different ideas. So yeah, if you are interested in joining Patreon, then check out the link in the description down below. So Dolores Jane Umbridge was born on the 26th of August in 1965 and was the eldest of two children born to Orford Umbridge and Ellen Cracknell. Now, Orford was a wizard, but Ellen was a muggle who was given permission to live within the wizarding world. Dolores' younger brother, however, was actually born a squib, and her father, out of shame, denounced both his mother and son. And under her father's influence, Dolores actually grew to despise both her mother and brother, and this actually caused the pair to leave the family home, with Ellen taking her youngest son to live in the muggle world, and the pair were actually never heard from again. Dolores then, of course, attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and she was sorted into Slytherin House with Horace Slughorn as her head of house. Now, Horace actually took an instant dislike to Dolores. He thought her to be idiotic. It's got a point. Sensing her prejudiced morals and her thirst for power, Dolores was actually denied any form of power within her time during Hogwarts, so she was never made head of house or a prefect. This actually really annoyed Dolores. It made her feel deprived and actually made her never truly enjoy her time at Hogwarts. After graduating Hogwarts, Dolores quickly rose to an influential position within the Ministry of Magic. Starting as an intern in the improper use of magic office, she became the head of the office before reaching the age of 30. She used ruthless tactics disguised under a sweet persona, and this actually included her taking credit for her colleagues' hard work. This began her dubious career within the ministry. She would tyrannize her subordinates and actually try and flatter her equals and superiors. Now, while once siding with her father, she actually grew really ashamed of his low-level position within the Department of Magical Maintenance. Being so power-hungry, she was seeking a professional career within the Ministry of Magic, and actually pressured her father into an early retirement, promising him a small monthly allowance in exchange for him quietly disappearing. She would then go on to lie about her heritage, claiming that she was a pureblood and not in fact a half-muggle. Eventually, she'd make her way to becoming Senior Undersecretary to the Minister for Magic and earned a place in the Wizarding. When questioned by colleagues who didn't really care for her too much, she would actually lie about being related to that Umbridge who used to mop floors. She'd laugh and claim that her deceased father had once been a very well distinguished member of the Wizarding. And nasty things would tend to happen to colleagues that were asking too many questions about Orford. Things would also happen to people who didn't also share her values. And those who wanted to remain on her good side would pretend to believe her about her ancestry. Throughout her career, she would try to win the affections of one of her superiors to further advance her status, not caring at all who she was actually trying to flirt with, just so long as they would become a powerful husband. And unfortunately, while they admired her hard work and ambition, they'd actually find once they got to know her that she was actually very difficult to like. She was prone to spout very uncharitable views, and this would even shock those with anti-muggle ideologies, so she must have been saying some pretty nasty stuff. And because of this, Dolores never succeeded in getting married. Dolores' hate for half-breeds led her to draft a piece of anti-werewolf legislation in 1993, which made it nearly impossible for werewolves, such as Lupin, to find work. And this act would actually go on to assist Lord Voldemort in recruiting werewolves, preying on the ill treatment by the Ministry. She also campaigned in 1994 for all merpeople to be rounded up and tagged. This idea was actually scrapped, due to it being too ludicrous to be put into effect. In 1995, Dolores managed to claw her way up to power, using Cornelius Fudge's paranoia and insecurities to her advantage, and used her authority to intimidate Harry Potter during his trial before the Wizarding. She attempted to discredit his claim that he had used the Patronus charm in defense of the Dementors that had attacked him and Dudley Dursley in Little Whinging, stating that the Dementors were under the control of the Ministry and that them being in a Muggle suburb was preposterous. And she believed that Harry should be punished for inadvertently violating the decree for the reasonable restriction of underage wizardry. However, Harry was cleared of all charges, which really ticked Dolores off. What Dolores didn't reveal was it was actually her that ordered the Dementor attack on Harry and Dudley in the first place. Believing that both outcomes would actually work to her advantage, Harry would either be subjected to the Dementor's kiss or be forced to defend himself, which would result in his expulsion from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In 1995, Dolores became the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts, under the terms of Educational Decree No. 22 and without Dumbledore's consent. Her placement was to limit the use of martial magic and allow the Ministry to monitor the goings-on within Hogwarts. And Fudge did this due to an unfounded fear that Dumbledore was trying to take over as Minister for Magic and was using students as a way of overthrowing him. Having been denied any position of authority during her time as a student at Hogwarts, Dolores absolutely revelled in her newfound authority. She saw the return as a golden opportunity to wield power over those that she had thought had not given her her dues during her time at the school. She also expressed that she was not fond of children. During the start of year feast, she gave a despairingly dull speech. Hermione Granger summed up as the Ministry interfering at Hogwarts, interrupting Dumbledore with a cough, COVID, and spoke condescendingly to both teachers and students as though they were 5-year-old children. Her rude and subliminal speech led many teachers to scorn her. And after her speech, she received a very scattered and enthusiastic applause from both students and teachers, with only Argus Filch actually giving a genuine applause. Now, side note, I actually thought this was quite interesting because obviously she had shunned her brother previously for being a squib, and obviously Argus Filch himself is a squib. You would think that he would have a bad attitude towards her and it would be the same vice versa, but it actually doesn't end up being that way, so that's quite interesting to think, but I digress. We'll get back into the story. She taught Defense Against the Dark Arts according to a politically restricted, ministry-approved curriculum, and this entailed strictly the theory of Defense Against the Dark Arts, with no physical application. Dolores and the Ministry had hoped to decrease the chances that Dumbledore could form a wizard army of students and overthrow him. Now, with no teaching background, Dolores proved to be an ineffective teacher, and she had trouble maintaining the class's attention. And because of this, she ordered students to simply read from a book during classes and denied students the right to ask questions, simply observing them from behind her desk. Many students were concerned that they'd be left defenseless against the dark arts. And even if Voldemort was still dead, there are still many other threats that they would need to be able to defend themselves against. Any students that spoke out were immediately silenced or punished. And Dolores stuck fast to the line of the Ministry that Voldemort had not returned, and that Harry's claims were nothing but attention-seeking lies. To punish Harry for his constant claims of Voldemort's return, Umbridge forced him to write the phrase, "I must not tell lies," with a black quill that used the person's own blood as ink, and scratched the words into the flesh, and would eventually lead to permanent scarring. Due to her unwavering loyalty to Fudge and lack of teaching ability and obvious disrespect towards the school and its residents, she was heavily disliked by both teachers and students. After working at Hogwarts for a short while, Educational Decree No. 23 increased Dolores' power of influence in Hogwarts, and she became the first High Inquisitor. She used this position to evaluate, harass, and fire any teachers she deemed to be unsatisfactory. She was rude to many of the teachers, especially those who she believed had a close connection with Dumbledore himself, and those that she considered to be unfit to teach. People in glass houses, hey? Because Umbridge was refusing to teach any form of practical defense against the dark arts, Harry, Ron and Hermione formed a group called Dumbledore's Army, or the DA for short. And this, of course, was to help teach students how to defend themselves. Dolores, having her suspicions about the students and concerned that they would actually rebel, she moved to abolish all student groups of any more than 3 members, and that actually included Quidditch as well. Gaining the power that she had always craved as a student, Dolores would go on to cruelly dismiss and harass staff within Hogwarts. When Harry gave an interview to the Quibbler about Voldemort's return, Umbridge banned the possession of the magazine, which only spurred students on more to read the interview that Harry had given. Dolores eventually replaced Dumbledore as headmistress of Hogwarts after he took the blame for the DA that Harry and Hermione and Ron had set up. And in response to this, there was a full-fledged rebellion within Hogwarts, and she would find herself on the receiving end of many, many pranks and tricks, mainly orchestrated by the Weasley twins, but many other students would be involved as well. Even Peeves the Poltergeist revelled in making her life difficult. Even at one point, the headmaster's tower refused to recognise her as head of school and actually denied her entrance into Dumbledore's office. This caused her to throw an epic tantrum. Don't you just wish you could have seen that? Soon after, Dolores caught Harry and some of his fellow DA members trying to use the Floo network from within her office fireplace. And when Harry refused to tell her what it was that he was up to, she attempted to use Veritaserum on him to gain the truth. Snape, however, informed her that she'd actually used up all the Veritaserum on her last attempt to interrogate Harry. She then attempted to use the Cruciatus curse on him, which in her view would loosen his tongue. Hermione then convinced Dolores to follow her and Harry into the Forbidden Forest where Dumbledore had hidden a secret weapon. And while there, Dolores was confronted by a herd of centaurs, who she began to insult with racial slurs and call them half-breeds. She then attacked one of the centaurs, which caused the entire herd to become enraged, and she was attacked and nearly killed. Also in the commotion, the centaurs actually ended up breaking Dolores' wand in a stampede. Dolores was ultimately rescued by Dumbledore. Why, I do not know. Just leave her there, Dumbledore. But she was left with a significant fear for centaurs. After Voldemort was seen in the Ministry of Magic, Dumbledore was restored as headmaster and Umbridge was suspended following allegations of abuse. She was actually still within Hogwarts in the hospital wing after her attack by the centaurs. She did, however, attempt to sneak out of the castle, but ran into Peeves along the way, who ended up chasing her out of Hogwarts by beating her with a walking stick and a sock full of chalk. Dolores, however, was later reinstated as Undersecretary for the new minister, Rufus Scrimgeour, which I think I'm saying really, really wrong, but I can't pronounce that. That name is really difficult. Sorry. She was actually later seen at Dumbledore's funeral. Following Lord Voldemort's takeover of the ministry in 1997, Dolores oversaw the registration and persecution of Muggle-born witches and wizards. She would conduct trials and send innocent Muggle-borns to Azkaban prison for stealing magic from real witches and wizards. Umbridge somehow took over possession of Mad-Eye Moody's magical eye after his death, and actually fixed it to her office door and terrorised other ministry employees with the concept of her being able to watch their every move. At some point, Dolores received as a bribe the locket of Salazar Slytherin from Mundungus Fletcher. She was actually unaware of the fact that it was a Horcrux and that it had belonged to Voldemort at all. She did, however, use it to further prove her full blood status and claimed that it was a family heirloom. She boasted this fact to Hermione Granger, who at the time was posing as Mathilda Hopkirk whilst using Polyjuice Potion. It was during a trial of Muggle-born witch Mary Cattermole that Harry and Hermione were able to stun both Umbridge and a Death Eater by the name of Yaxley and steal the Horcrux from her. Hermione also created a copycat version of the locket so that Umbridge wouldn't be suspicious. Now, it said that during the time that Dolores actually had possession of the locket, it would have an effect on her, but not in a negative way that it had done on Harry, Ron and Hermione later on. It actually strengthened her, although not enough to fight off two 16-year-old witches and wizards, but, you know, just saying. After Voldemort's death, Dolores was actually arrested, tried and convicted for her crimes against Muggleborns, some of which actually did not survive her interrogations and torture, and she was sentenced to life in Azkaban prison. So that was the story of Dolores Umbridge and where she came from and how she came to be the most hated witch of her time. Now, at one point while reading her backstory, I kind of felt a little bit bad for her, the fact that she didn't have a very good role model in her father. But to be honest, I actually think she way surpassed her father and his views. I think she took his views that were probably very minimal views and it just completely distorted them to her own agenda. She craved power, she craved acceptance, she craved a position of authority, and I think that just made her a really, really damaged individual and someone that never actually managed to be anything other than vicious and cruel. I also think, sadly, that we've all come across a Dolores Umbridge within our lifetime. I think everyone meets a Dolores Umbridge at some point during their life, so it's very easy to dislike Dolores because you can kind of attach her to someone similar to her that you've had in your own life, and it makes it even easier for you to dislike her as a person. But yeah, I actually found it really interesting delving into Dolores's past. There was actually a few bits and bobs along the way that I found out that I didn't know previously. So I did find it really, really interesting. But of course, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. What did you think of the backstory of Dolores Umbridge? Did you actually find this video interesting? Would you like me to do some more? This is something that I'm quite intrigued by, to find out if you guys are actually interested in hearing the backstories of maybe the lesser known characters. So obviously the Golden Trio, we pretty much know all about their upbringings and their lives from a very early age, whereas some of the older characters and some of the characters that are less pronounced within the movies, we know a little bit less about. So would you like to see me do more of these? And if so, who would you like to see me do next? If you did enjoy this video, then please give it a magical thumbs up for me so that you know. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already, and turn the notification bells on as well to be notified of every time I upload a video, and I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye, you guys.